When I was 5, my parents left me at a bus stop with a backpack and a juice box. My parents kissed my forehead and said, "Stay here. Someone will find you." Then they drove off smiling with my baby sister in the back seat. I never saw them again until 25 years later when they walked in my office and said, "We're your family. We've come to bring you home." My mom set me down at the bus stop when I was 5 and said, "Stay here. Someone will find you." She drove off smiling with my dad and baby sister, leaving me in the dust. I couldn't scream, just stood there watching the truck fade. 25 years later, they walked into my office and said, "We're your family. We've come to bring you back. It's always a pleasure to have you with us." Just before we jump in, tell us where you're joining from, your city, state, or even country. Let's get back to the story now. I was 5, standing barefoot at the bus stop, the Texas sun baking the cracked concrete beneath me. My juice box, apple, my favorite, was half empty and warm in my small hand. Mom had handed it to me an hour ago when we'd rattled up to this dusty stop off Highway 87, our old Ford truck coughing like it was ready to quit. "Just a quick stop, Ethan," she'd said, her voice thin like she was holding her breath. Dad was up front, his jaw tight. Baby Sarah wailed in her car seat, her chubby fists waving. I wanted to hush her, but Mom yanked me out of the truck instead. "Stand here, Ethan," she said, kneeling so her hazel eyes met mine. Her hair was tangled, sweaty strands sticking to her forehead. "Someone will find you, okay? Just wait." Her fingers brushed my cheek, shaky, and I smelled the stale coffee on her breath, same as every morning when she'd sip from her chipped mug at the kitchen table. Dad tossed my small backpack beside me, muttering, "Ruth, we're late." He wouldn't look at me. He never did much, not since Sarah came along. I clutched that juice box, confused. "Where you going, Mama?" My voice was small, lost in the buzz of cicadas. She didn't answer, just climbed back in, tugging Sarah's blanket higher. The truck roared to life, and I ran a few steps, yelling, "Wait." Dust stung my eyes as they peeled out, tailpipes spitting black smoke. I stood there, heart hammering, watching the taillights shrink until they were gone. The juice box slipped from my hand, spilling across the concrete. Hours passed. My throat burned. Legs wobbled. Buses came and went, but no one stopped. I kept thinking Mom would turn back, her laugh filling the cab like it used to when we'd sing Patsy Cline on long drives. But the sun sank low, and I was alone, just a speck at that big empty bus stop. Then Hank the mechanic ambled over, his grease-stained hands gentle as he said, "Hey kiddo, you okay?" I wasn't. I didn't know if I ever would be. Hank and June didn't have much, a single wide trailer with peeling paint and a sagging porch, but they made room for me. That first night, I sat on their couch, a lumpy thing patched with duct tape, staring at a faded photo of them grinning by a fishing hole. Hank handed me a glass of sweet tea, the ice clinking, and said, "You're safe here, Ethan." June knelt, slipping an old flannel shirt over my shoulder. It smelled like motor oil and lavender, a mix that stuck with me. I nodded, but inside I was a knot of questions. Why did Mom and Dad come back? Was it something I'd done? The sheriff came by the next day, his boots crunching gravel. He scratched his head and said, "They checked our trailer 5 miles down the road. Empty. Clothes gone. Dishes still in the sink like they planned it." I pictured Mom stacking plates after supper, humming soft over the radio. It didn't make sense. June hugged me tight, her apron dusted with flour from biscuits she'd baked to cheer me up. "We'll figure it out," she murmured. But we didn't. Days turned to weeks, and I kept my eyes on the horizon, waiting for that rusty truck to roll back. Hank started bringing me to the garage. He'd prop me on a stool, hand me a wrench, and say, "Hold this steady, kid." I liked the weight of it, the way grease stained my fingers. He talked about carburetors and spark plugs, his voice low and steady, like he was teaching me more than engines. June braided my hair in the mornings before school, her hands gentle but firm. "You got a good head, Ethan," she'd say, tying off the ends with a rubber band. I'd smile, but at night, I'd lie on their spare cot, the springs creaking, and cry into the pillow. I missed Mom's off-key singing, Dad's rare chuckle when he'd win at cards. I'd whisper, "Come get me," into the dark, hoping they'd hear. School started when I was 7. Hank drove me in his pickup, the bench seat worn soft. Kids stared. Word had spread about the bus stop boy. I kept my head down, clutching a secondhand backpack June had patched up. My teacher, Mrs. Larson, had gray hair and kind eyes. She caught me reading under my desk one day, Charlotte's Web, and slipped me more books after class. "You're a smart one," she said. I devoured them, losing myself in stories of kids who made it through worse. It was easier than facing the whispers in the lunchroom. Hank and June made it official when I turned 8. Paper signed. A judge in a black robe nodding like it was no big deal. They took me for ice cream after vanilla soft serve from the Dairy Queen, dripping down the cone. Hank grinned. "You're a carver now. Legally ours." June squeezed my hand, her rings cool against my skin. I smiled back, but it didn't reach inside. I'd watch buses pull into the station, my heart jumping every time, thinking they might bring my parents back. I'd dream of Mom bursting and saying it was all a mistake, her arms wide, but the lot stayed quiet. Nights were the hardest. I'd wake up sweating, seeing Dad's back as he climbed into the truck, Mom's shaky fingers brushing my cheek. I'd tiptoe to the window, the moon casting shadows on the scrubby yard, and wonder where they were. Was Sarah walking yet? Did they miss me at all? One night, June found me there, her nightgown frayed at the hem. She didn't say much, just sat with me, her breathing steady. "It's okay to hurt, Ethan," she whispered. I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks, but I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't enough. By 9, I'd stopped talking about them so much. Hank taught me to change oil, his calloused hands guiding mine. June baked pies, pecan, my favorite, and we'd eat on the porch, the radio crackling with country tunes. They were good to me, better than I'd expected, but there was a hole, quiet and deep, that their kindness couldn't fill. I'd sit in church Sundays, the preacher droning about love and forgiveness, and I'd wonder if I'd ever stop waiting. I'd trace the scars on my heart, invisible but real, left by a promise that never came true. "Someone will find you," Mom had said. Hank and June did, but it wasn't the same. I was theirs now, but part of me stayed lost, sitting by that dusty bus stop, hoping for a truck that never turned back. By 13, I was taller, all knees and elbows, and spent most days at Hank's garage after school. The air smelled of gasoline and burnt coffee, and I'd perch on a stool, tightening bolts while Hank whistled Hank Williams tunes. I gotten good with my hands, could swap a tire faster than some of the guys he hired. Kids from town started hanging around, too, leaning on rusted hoods, griping about their folks or school. I'd listen, nodding over a Coke, and they'd spill more than they meant to. "You're easy to talk to, Ethan," one said, kicking gravel. I didn't know it then, but that was the start of something. School was different. I'd outgrown the bus stop boy whispers, but I kept to myself, eating lunch with a book under the bleachers. Mrs. Larson, my English teacher, caught on. She'd slip me paperbacks, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Outsiders, and leave notes in the margins. "What do you think, Ethan?" I'd scribble back pages full of thoughts I couldn't say out loud. One day, she pulled me aside, her glasses sliding down her nose. "You've got a way with words," she said. "Ever think about helping people with them?" I shrugged, but her words stuck like a seed in dry soil. Hank noticed too. He'd catch me scribbling in a spiral notebook, old receipts taped inside while the radio crackled. "What's that?" he asked once, wiping grease on his jeans. "Just stuff," I mumbled, shoving it under a toolbox. But he'd grin. "Keep at it, kid." I did. Nights, I'd sit on the trailer steps, June's porch light buzzing with moths, and write about the hole inside me. Not big dramatic stuff, just how the wind sounded that day at the bus stop, or how I wondered if Sarah had Mom's crooked smile. It hurt less on paper, like I could pin it down and let it breathe. 16, I hit a wall. I'd been hauling hay with Hank all summer, my arms scratched and sunburned, muscles aching from the work that never seemed to end. The physical pain was almost a relief compared to what I carried inside. That evening, the weight of all those years crushed down on me like the thunderclouds gathering on the horizon. We were eating supper, the three of us, around that worn kitchen table where we'd shared 1,000 meals. The vinyl tablecloth was faded from years of scrubbing, the pattern barely visible anymore. June's meatloaf steamed on my plate, mashed potatoes, lumpy but good. Green beans from the garden lined up like soldiers. The radio hummed softly in the background, Willie Nelson singing about blue skies. I stared at my food, pushing it around while something inside me unraveled, thread by thread. The question that had lived in my bones for 11 years bubbled up, unstoppable. And before I could swallow it back, I blurted, "Why didn't they love me?" The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy and acrid. The room went quiet, just the tick of the wall clock counting seconds that stretched into forever. A moth fluttered against the screen door, desperate to reach the kitchen light. Outside, a dog barked in the distance. June set her fork down with a soft clink against the plate, her eyes soft and glistening with tears. She was trying to hold back. The lines around her mouth deepened, etched by years of hard work and worry, much of it for me. "Oh, honey," she said, reaching for me across the table, her hand weathered from decades of washing and cooking and mending. Her fingers closed around mine, warm and solid like an anchor. "You're enough." Her voice cracked on the words. She swallowed hard and squeezed my hand tighter. "Always were." Hank cleared his throat, setting down his glass of sweet tea. He wasn't a man of many words, never had been. Emotions made him uncomfortable, like wearing a suit that was too tight. But he looked at me, then really looked at me, his eyes a faded blue that had seen too much sun. "Some folks break what they can't fix, Ethan," he said, voice rough like gravel. "Ain't your fault." He nodded once, definitive, like he was hammering down a nail. "Ain't never been your fault." I stared at my plate, gravy pooling around the meatloaf, turning the potatoes into islands. A tear slipped down my cheek, then another splashing onto the tablecloth. I'd spent years blaming myself, thinking I must have done something terrible to make them leave me like that. Maybe I'd cried too much, asked for too many things, hadn't been quiet enough on long drives. But looking at Hank and June, these two people who'd taken in a dusty, abandoned child without a second thought, who'd never once made me feel like a burden, something inside me shifted. A crack in the foundation of my guilt, letting in a sliver of light. That night, after the dishes were done and June had gone to bed, I sat on the porch steps, watching lightning flicker on the horizon. Hank came out, settling his creaking bones beside me. He didn't speak for a long time, just rolled a cigarette between his fingers without lighting it. "Your folks," he finally said. "They had their own demons. Saw it the few times they came into the garage. Your dad's eyes always darting around like he owed somebody. Your mom, jumpy as a cat." He sighed, the sound merging with the chorus of cicadas. "Some people, they just can't outrun themselves, no matter how far they go." He patted my knee awkwardly. "Don't make it right. Just makes it what it is." We sat there as the storm rolled in, the air thick with electricity and unspoken truths. For the first time, I began to consider that maybe, just maybe, the broken piece wasn't me. And that understanding, fragile as a butterfly wing, felt like the beginning of something I couldn't yet name. They couldn't fix my past, but maybe I could build something from it. That fall, I joined the school newspaper. Mrs. Larson pushed me, said I could interview better than anyone. I'd sit with kids in the cafeteria, asking about their lives over soggy fries, and they'd open up. I wrote about the football team's losing streak, the janitor who'd worked there 30 years, little stories that made folks feel seen. People started saying hi in the halls, and I'd nod back, surprised. It wasn't friendship, not really, but it was something. I kept my distance, though. Trust was a rickety bridge I wasn't ready to cross. Hank got me a beat-up typewriter for my birthday, the keys sticking. "Found it at a junk sale," he said, proud. I'd type late, the clack echoing in the trailer, June snoring through the thin walls. I wrote about the kids at the garage, how Tommy's dad drank too much, how Lisa ran away but came back. I didn't know it then, but I was figuring out how to listen, how to hold space for hurt. Mrs. Larson read one piece and said, "Ethan, you could be a counselor. Help folks for real." I laughed it off, but the idea lodged deep. Senior year, I buckled down, straight as a stack of college brochures on my desk. Hank and June sat me down one night, their faces serious. "We ain't got much," Hank said, "but we'll help however we can." June nodded, her hands folded. "You're going places, Ethan." I applied for scholarships. My essays raw about the bus stop, the waiting, the way I turned it into fuel. When the acceptance letter came from UT Austin's psychology program, full ride, I cried in the bathroom so they wouldn't see. Hank clapped my shoulder. June baked a cake, yellow with too much frosting. "Proud of you," they said. and I felt it warm and real. But the dreams didn't stop. I'd wake up, 17 now, seeing mom's hazel eyes flicker, dad's shadow in the truck's cab. I'd sit by the window, the trailer creaking in the wind, and wonder where they were. Did they ever think of me? I pushed it down, focused on what was ahead. College, a chance to help kids like the ones at the garage. Hank's words echoed. Some folks break what they can't fix. Maybe they couldn't fix me in their story. But I was writing my own now, one word at a time. At 23, I was out of college, diploma in hand, and working at a youth center in Austin. The place was a concrete box, fluorescent lights, buzzing. But it felt alive, with kids, runaways, foster teens, ones with bruises they wouldn't explain. I'd sit with them in a chipped folding chair, a styrofoam cup of coffee going cold between my palms, and listen. Really listen, not just to their words, but to the spaces between them, the things they couldn't say. I'd learned that sometimes the heaviest truths hide in silence. The center was always too hot in summer, too cold in winter. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps, casting everyone in a sickly pallor. But it was a sanctuary of sorts, a place where broken stories could be told without judgment. My stepdad's a jerk, one might mutter, picking at a hoodie string, eyes fixed on the scuffed linoleum floor. The words were simple, but loaded with a universe of hurt. Bruises hidden under long sleeves in summer, flinching at sudden movements. Sleep-deprived eyes. I'd nod, quiet, letting them unravel at their own pace. No pushing, no praying, just holding space for their pain, like someone once held it for mine. Sometimes they'd talk for hours, their stories pouring out like water from a broken dam. Other times, they'd just sit, the silence between us comfortable, almost holy. I'd offer them the dignity of being seen, of having their suffering witnessed, without being told to get over it or look on the bright side. How'd you end up doing this? A tough kid named Darius asked me once. His dark eyes narrowed with suspicion. He had 3 teardrops tattooed beside his left eye, hair shaved on one side. You don't look like you've had it rough. That made me smile. Just a little. Appearances, the great deceiver. We all wear our wounds differently. I sat at a bus stop for hours when I was 5. I told him simply, watching the road for a truck that never came back. Something in his face shifted, recognition flickering like a match struck in darkness. Yeah, he said after a long moment. That tracks. They'd look at me, lanky, freckled, hair always a bit too shaggy, and see something they trusted. Not because I was special or particularly wise, but because I carried the same hollow space they did. That peculiar emptiness that comes from having the people who should have protected you walk away instead. I got it. That ache of being tossed aside fueled me, turned my own healing into purpose. After long days of bearing witness to so much pain, I'd return to my 1-bedroom apartment in a forgettable building with peeling paint and temperamental plumbing. The walls were mostly bare except for a framed photo of Hank and June by the lake, their faces sun-weathered and smiling. June holding up a small fish, Hank's arm around her shoulders, proud as if she'd caught a whale. I traced their faces, sometimes missing them with an ache that never quite went away. The apartment wasn't much. Cramped kitchen with avocado green appliances from the 70s, bathroom where the hot water took 5 minutes to kick in, living room that doubled as my bedroom when the money was particularly tight, but it was mine. Every rent check I wrote felt like a victory, a statement to the universe. I am here. I exist. I'm making my way. Some nights I'd sit on my small balcony overlooking the parking lot, watching people come and go, a young mother struggling with groceries and a toddler, an old man walking his ancient dog, college students laughing too loudly. All these lives intersecting briefly, everyone carrying their own stories. I'd sip cheap beer from a bottle and wonder if any of them were waiting for someone who never came back. Mornings I'd brew coffee in a pot June had mailed me, the drip steady as I watched the sun climb over the city. I moved 3 hours from home, but they'd visit, June fussing over my fridge. Too much takeout, not enough greens. Hank would tinker with my leaky sink, grumbling about city plumbing. You're doing good, Ethan, he'd say, and I'd smile, feeling their pride like a warm quilt. My days were full, counseling, paperwork, coaxing kids to open up. At night, I'd sit on my sagging couch, staring at that photo, missing the trailer's creak. 2 years in, Hank had a heart attack. I got the call at midnight, June's voice trembling through static. He's gone, honey. I drove home in a daze, the highway blurring, and found her in the trailer, surrounded by casseroles neighbors had dropped off. Hank's toolbox sat by the door, wrenches gleaming. I sank beside it, tracing the cold metal, and sobbed, deep, ugly sobs that shook me. He'd been my rock, the one who'd pulled me from that bus stop dust at the funeral. I wore his old flannel, too big, and stood by June as folks shook our hands, murmuring he was a good man. I nodded, throat tight, feeling immortal all over again. June sold the trailer after that, moved into my spare room. She'd shuffle around in slippers, cooking chili or folding laundry, her hands slower now. Don't need much space, she'd say, but I saw the sadness in her eyes. I kept working, threw myself into it. By 27, I'd save enough to start Crossroads Haven, a nonprofit for at-risk teens. We rented a storefront, peeling paint, a flickering sign, and I hired a couple counselors, kids ourselves, barely scraping by. I'd lead groups there. Keens sprawled on beanbags, talking about fights or drugs or dreams they didn't dare name. You're not alone, I'd tell them, voice soft but firm, and they'd look at me like maybe they believed it. I loved it, the chaos, the breakthroughs. One kid, Ale, 15, all sharp edges, just started showing up regular. He'd sit quiet, then one day said, "My mom left me at a rest stop." You get that, right? I nodded, swallowing hard. Yeah, I do. He kept coming, softened a little. It was small wins like that, over burnt pizza and bad coffee, that kept me going. June beamed when I'd tell her, "You're saving them, Ethan." I'd shrug, but inside it felt like stitching on my own old wounds, thread by thread. Then at 29, something cracked open. One of my kids, Jamal, 16, a talker, funny, quick with a grin, working through his foster home mess, stopped showing up. I called around. Got nothing till a girl whispered he'd left with some couple promising cash. Shady folks, she said. Older, smooth talking. My gut twisted. I dug deeper. Asked cops, checked shelters. Word came back. A man and woman, mid-50s, trolling for runaways with fake jobs. The description nagged me. Her nervous laugh, his clipped voice. It couldn't be, but it lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake. I'd lie awake after that, June's snores drifting through the wall, and think about Mom and Dad. I hadn't dreamed of them much lately, but now they crept back. Mom's shaky fingers, Dad's turned back. Were they out there, still running? Did Sarah know my name? I pushed it down, got up, made coffee, focused on the kids. Crossroads was growing. Donations trickled, and we added a hotline. I'd answer calls at night, voice steady for some scared teen on the line. But that shadow grew. One evening, flipping through Jamal's file, I found a note he'd left. They said they knew you, Ethan. My breath caught. Knew me how? June caught me staring at it one morning, her mug steaming. What's eating you? She asked, voice gentle. I shook my head. Just a hunch. But it wasn't. It was a thread pulling loose, unraveling years I'd patched tight. I kept going, met with donors, hugged Alex when he got his GED, but my mind drifted. I'd walk past the bus station on drives home and feel that old dust in my throat. I built a life, a good one, with chipped chairs and kids who needed me. But something was stirring, a reckoning I didn't want but couldn't dodge. I'd sit with June at supper, her cornbread warm, butter melting, and wonder if the past was closer than I'd thought, waiting to knock. I was 30, bone-tired after a day at Crossroads Haven, when June met me at the door, her apron twisted in her hands. Two folks came by, she said, voice low. Asked for you by name. There, waiting at the center. My stomach dropped. I've been chasing leads on Jamal's disappearance for weeks, that nagging hunch growing sharper. I grabbed my keys, drove over to Austin, dusk-heavy with heat. Inside, the lobby was dimmed, just the hum of the vending machine. Then I saw them. Mom, Dad, and a lanky girl with my freckles. Mom stepped forward, gray hair pulled tight, smiling too wide. Ethan, baby, we found you. My chest tightened. Anger. Disbelief. A flicker of something soft I hated feeling. They sat across from me in my office, the desk cluttered with files. Mom, Ruth, leaned in, her perfume sharp cheap. We never meant to leave you long, she said, eyes darting. Debt collectors were after us. We had to get Sarah safe. Dad, Dale, nodded, his flannel stained, voice gruff. Came back that night. But you were gone. The woman, Sarah, my sister, shifted, staring at her boots. I gripped my chair, nails digging in. Sheriff checked, I said. Flat. Trailer was cleared out. You didn't come back. Mom's smile faltered, but Dad pressed on. We looked for years. Saw you on the news, your little charity doing real good. His eyes glinted, calculating. I saw it then. They weren't here for me. I poured coffee from the pot, buying time. So why now? I asked, sliding mugs over. Mom sipped too quick. We're family, Ethan, she said. Thought we could help each other. Dad grinned, leaning back. You've got a nice setup. Could use some support ourselves. My jaw clenched. Money. They wanted my money. Crossroads money. The kids' money. I set my mug down, the clink loud in the quiet. You don't know me, I said, voice low. Sarah finally looked up, hazel eyes like Mom's, but sadder. I'm sorry, she muttered, barely audible. I didn't know what she meant yet. Then it hit me. Jamal. I pulled his file from the stack, flipped it open. You know a kid named Jamal? I asked, watching them. Dad's grin froze. Mom coughed. Don't think so. But I pressed. He's missing. Last seen with a couple like you. Promising jobs, taking cash. Sarah flinched. I kept going, calm but cold. And someone's been spreading lies, saying I skim funds, neglect the kids. My donors are spooked. Mom's mug shook. Dad stood. That's crazy talk. But I saw the guilt flicker. They'd done it. Lure Jamal. Trash my name. All to claw their way in. My throat burned. Not with tears, but fury. I stood, facing them. You left me at 5. Now you're back, scamming my kids, smearing me. My voice stayed even, but it cut. Mom stammered. It's not like that. I cut her off. It's exactly like that. I built this from nothing. Nothing you gave me. Dad's face hardened. We're your folks, Ethan. You owe us. I laughed, sharp and bitter. I owe you dust in a half-empty juice box. Sarah stood, hands up. Ethan, wait. I didn't. Mom snapped. Shut up, Sarah. But she didn't. She looked at me, pleading. I need to talk. Alone. They left the room, Mom muttering, Dad's boots heavy. Sarah stayed, shutting the door. I crossed my arms, waiting. She paced, then stopped. You're not his, she said, voice cracking. Mom was married before your dad died. Truc accident. Dale never wanted you. When I was born, he said it was his chance to start over. They ditched you on purpose. My knees buckled, but I caught the desk, not his. A step Kitty hated. I clicked his cold stares. Mom's shaky lies. They've been grifting since, Sarah went on. Saw you on TV a year ago. Figured you're loaded now. Jamal. They got him to some guy promising work. I tried to stop them. I sank into my chair, staring at the coffee rings on my desk. And the rumors? Sarah nodded. Miserable. Dad's idea. Wear you down. Make you need them. I pressed my fingers to my temples, the weight of it sinking in. They hadn't just left me. They'd erased me, then come back to bleed me dry. Sarah sat, head in hands. I've carried this since I was a kid, hearing them laugh about it. I am sorry, Etan. Her voice broke, and I saw it, guilt, real and raw. I looked at her, my sister, a stranger with my eyes. Why tell me? I asked quiet. She met my gaze. Because you deserve the truth. And I'm done with their mess. The room felt small, air thick. I thought of June's chili simmering at home, the warm, spicy scent that would greet me when I opened the door. I thought of the battered spiral notebook on my nightstand where I'd scrawled my thoughts before bed every night for years, a ritual of making sense of the senseless. I thought of the center, the mismatched furniture we'd scrounged from donations, the wall of Polaroids showing kids who'd come through our doors, some smiling, serious, all carrying burdens too heavy for their young shoulders. I thought of Alex and his poetry, now hanging on our wall of voice. I thought of Jamal's laugh, how it broke through his tough exterior like sunshine through storm clouds. The life I'd scraped together hadn't come easy. Every brick had been laid with trembling hands, mortared with tears and doubt and the gnawing fear that I wasn't enough, would never be enough. I'd build it anyway, this fragile, beautiful thing. A place of belonging for the abandoned, a lighthouse for the lost. And now these people, these strangers with familiar faces, had tried to rip it apart again. For a moment, standing in my office with the weight of this revelation pressing down on me, I was 5 years old again, standing at that bus stop, juice box warming in my hand, watching dust settle where a truck had been. The same helplessness threatened to swallow me whole. The same devastating. Why wasn't I worth staying for? But I wasn't that child anymore. I'd grown into a man who knew that some questions don't have answers you can live with. A man who'd learned to build anyway, to love anyway, to move forward, even when the past kept trying to drag me back. I stood, decision made, my spine straightening with the certainty of it. A calmness settled over me like still water after a storm. "Get them in here," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Sarah nodded, a flash of relief in her eyes before she stepped out. I leaned on the desk, steadying myself. My fingers traced the scratches in the wood, each one a story. A kid who'd sat across from me and shared their pain. Jamal had carved his initials into the corner when he thought I wasn't looking. I'd let him, understanding the deep human need to leave a mark, to say, I was here. I mattered. Through the thin walls, I could hear the muffled sounds of my parents arguing, a familiar soundtrack from childhood playing 25 years later. Some things never change. But I had. I'd transformed my abandonment into a mission, my pain into purpose. And no one, especially not them, was going to take that from me. I took a deep breath, straightened the files on my desk, uncapped a pen, recapped it, small, mundane actions to center myself in the present. Outside my window, Austin traffic flowed endlessly, people going about their lives unaware of the small earthquake happening inside these walls. Life was like that. Suns, catastrophes happening alongside ordinary moments, invisible to everyone else. I thought of all the kids who'd sat where my parents were about to sit, their private earthquakes shaking them to the core while the world kept turning, indifferent. They'd walk back and smiling, but they wouldn't walk out that way. Sarah brought them back into my office, Mom's smile gone, Dad's shoulders hunched. I stood behind my desk, the lamp casting long shadows on the files I'd fought to fill with hope. "Sit," I said, voice steady as the hum of the old heater kicked on. They did, uneasy. I looked at them. Ruth and Dale, strangers who'd shaped me by leaving. Sarah told me everything. I started slow. How I wasn't yours, Dale. How you dumped me to start clean. How you been grifting. Heat all spread lies to bleed me dry. Mom's eyes widened, fake tears starting. Dad glared at Sarah. "You little," I cut him off. "Enough." I leaned forward, hands flat on the desk. I could call the cops. Fraud, theft, slander, plenty to pin on you. Mom blinked, confused. Dad snorted, suspicious. "Why not?" he growled. I straightened, feeling the weight lift. "Because I don't need your mess dragging me down. I've built something here. Kids who count on me. A life you don't get to touch. Leave. Don't come back." Mom whimpered. "Ethan, we're family." I shook my head. "You stopped being that 25 years ago." They stood slow, like the air had thickened. I pointed to the door. "Go." They shuffled out, footsteps fading down the hall. Sarah lingered, hands in her pockets. "Should I go too?" she asked, voice small. I studied her. Those hazel eyes, the slump of regret. "That's up to you," I said. "I don't trust easy. But if you're serious about breaking free, we can talk." She nodded, a flicker of relief. "I want to fix something, Ethan. Whatever I can." I didn't smile, but I didn't turn away. "We'll see," I said, and she stepped out, leaving the door cracked. 3 months later, I stood at Crossroads Haven, the room packed with teens, staff, a few donors sipping weak punch. Jamal was back, safe, shaken, but here. I tracked him down through a shelter, got him away from the grifters. Now I faced the crowd, my notes crumpled in my pocket. "I was left at a bus stop when I was 5, I said, voice quiet but clear. Parents drove off, didn't look back. I spent years wondering why I wasn't enough. They came back recently, tried to take what I'd built. I let them go, not out of weakness, but strength." I glanced at Sarah in the back, stacking chairs with Alex. "Family isn't just blood," I went on. "It's who stays, who fights for you." I found that with Hank and June with these kids. And I learned something. Life can leave you at crossroads, dust in your throat, no map. You can stay there waiting, or you can walk on. I walked, built. This place found purpose. You don't erase the hurt. It's part of you, but you can turn it into something good. That's what I tell these kids. You're enough right where you are. Choose your road. The room clapped, soft at first, then loud. June hugged me after, her grip fierce. Sarah caught my eye, a nod between us. I felt steady, not whole, but free. The past was dust settling, and a new dawn stretched wide. Thank you for taking the time to walk through this story with me. Behind every family photo, there's often a hidden truth or silent sorrow. If this story touched something personal, I'd be honored to hear your thoughts. Sharing can be healing for you and for someone else. Reading